I describe value as what the customer sees is worth paying for. Nothing else really has value. In our industry, we say things like our DVI process adds a lot of value. I think a DVI is good, and I'm not saying don't do a DVI. But if you polled your customers and asked them whether they thought it was worth paying $150 for a DVI, you would find out that they do not in most cases. So it has no value to them. So value is what you can charge for.
The following program features a bunch of doofuses talking about the automotive aftermarket. The stuff we, or our guests may say, do not necessarily reflect the beliefs of our peers, our sponsors, or any other associations we may have. There may be some spicy language in this show, so if you get your feelings hurt easily, you should probably just move along. So without further ado, it's time for Confessions of a Shop Owner, with your host, Mike Allen.
Did your wife buy all your clothes for you?
Everything. I don't know that I've really bought anything for myself, clothing-wise, and I take that back. At ASTA, I went to the mall and bought the wrong size jeans that I still haven't taken back yet.
So I'm a big Red Bull Racing fan in Formula One, so that's the hoodie that I'm wearing right now, but I would never buy one of these because they're stupid expensive. But I was at Apex and SEMA, and Lucas and Jeff Compton and I went to dinner with some techs that were at the show on scholarship. It was a really good dinner, but we were over at Caesar's Palace. Mm-hmm. And I somehow managed to dump I reached forward to the table and then pulled my hand back with my whiskey glass and hit the water goblet and like pulled a full water goblet of cold ice water onto me. And I was freezing my ass off, and best possible chance of getting back to the room was like half hour with, everywhere it takes forever to get to in Vegas.
Yep.
And so I just swerved right into the first store in the casino and bought a Red Bull hoodie and changed in the fitting room. And then Amanda gave me a hard time about having a $180 hoodie because it's ridiculous that I own a $180 hoodie. That's stupid. So anyway.
So one of my first mistake as a married man, I had just bought the shop or I was getting ready to buy the shop. So I told my wife, I was like, look, we need to be budget friendly right now on the personal side of things. We got to cut down and cut a few personal expenses. We were in Raleigh for a friend of hers wedding. She went to NC State. And so we're killing some time at the mall. They're all getting their makeup done at one of the places there in the mall is what we were there for. So I'm walking around with a buddy of mine. We go into one of the like sporting goods type stores, and I'm a big Florida State fan. And this was the last year that Florida State won the national championship. So it would have been 2013. So they had a patent leather gold Florida State hat with the big spear on the side of it. And I bought it. And I came walking out and I had that hat on. And I mean, she lost her mind on me. She was like, you're telling me that I need to watch my spending and you just went and bought the ugliest $80 hat in the history of the world.
Do you still have it?
I do. And every now and I'll send you a picture of it here in just a little bit. Every now and again, I'll put it on and get myself in more trouble.
Sometimes you got to poke the bear.
So, well, actually, I might wear it this Friday because I'll be in Raleigh for the Florida State NC State game.
Nice. Go Seminoles.
Yeah.
Boo Wolfpack.
Yeah. You're a UNC fan, right?
I am a Tar Heel through and through. So it's basketball season.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't care about football. Anyway, we are playing that school in Durham this weekend. By the time this is released, it will be in the past, and we'll be able to revel in the glorious victory of the mighty Tar Heels. UNC, the abbreviation for University of North Carolina, is actually an abbreviation for the University of National Champions. They are the best.
So I am a UNC basketball fan. just because if you're going to be in North Carolina and you have to be a college basketball fan of some kind. And if you're going to be one, might as well be one that Michael Jordan played at. Uh, so that was my determination of picking.
Hey there, I'm going to tell you about something new in our industry, Tectonic 2026, presented by TechMetric. This isn't just a user conference, it's built for the whole shop. Owners, advisors, and techs each have sessions designed for what they actually do every day. It's 3 days in Houston filled with workshops, panels, and over 1,000 people from across the industry, and you don't have to be a TechMetric customer to attend. Tap the link in the show notes to check out Tectonic 2026. Grab early bird pricing while you can. Look, here's the deal. I like to think that I'm pretty good at running an auto repair shop. It's what I've done for 20 plus years, but I'm not good at managing a marketing budget and all the different facets of a truly well-rounded marketing plan. There's mail, there's local advertising, there's website, there's Google AdWords, there's all the different things that go into that, and it's just not what I'm good at. So what I've chosen to do is to buy myself the time to focus on what I am good at while having someone else execute on all of those things at a way higher level than anything I could ever do. That's what turnkey auto marketing does for me. So if you feel like you could use some of that same magic, I'm going to recommend that you go to turnkeyautomarketing.com, get a free consultation, tell them that I sent you, tell them that Confessions of a Shop Owner sent you. You won't be disappointed.
UNC over the rest of them.
I will tell you that for the most part, our listeners don't give two shits about sports or college sports. So we probably shouldn't bore them with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, how was, we're halfway through November at this point. How was October for you?
Yeah, October was great. We had a record month at the shop, and
nice.
It was busy. It's good. I wish more of it would have carried into November, but
yeah, you were telling me about some of that.
We seemed to run out of luck there as soon as the clock struck midnight on the 31st. But we're using our time wisely to plan for 2026 right now.
Well, we also had a record October. I feel like we've twisted on the knobs appropriately, and things at the Hillsborough Street store are really running smoothly. We got the staffing levels where we want them. I think we got right people, right seat kind of deal. The culture over there is amazing. They're having fun and they're just killing it. So super excited about that after what was kind of a up and down summer to be coming into the fall and setting a record is nice. So
yeah, well, congratulations. I know you guys have been kind of fighting that battle for the last 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah,
and
sure.
trying to get the chemistry over there right. So before we get into everything, let's kind of run through some of the numbers. I know we were talking a little bit offline, and top line number looked pretty good there. Just really quick, just to kind of recap staffing wise, because I know we've been here, there, and everywhere on the staffing. You said you finally got your chemistry and everything right. We're senior advisor.
Yeah, we have a senior advisor. We have a support advisor who's kind of splitting his time between the front of house and back of house, helping with estimates and phones and parts and things. We have a GS, and we have 2 technicians.
Okay.
So it's a 3-bay shop. We've got 1 lift outside, so I can call it 3.5. It's small, it's cramped, it's dirty, it's an old building, but it's a great location.
Okay. And so top line numbers for last month were
175.
175.
That was 229 tickets at $763 a piece with a 59.9% GP. I think that was a record month. It was definitely a record month on GP.
Yeah, that's 100% a record. Yeah. So there's some strong numbers. Let's talk about outside of the chemistry side of it. How has, what's changed on the process side that's allowed that to happen? Because that's a drastic difference. Are we seeing that trending into the rest of this year and into next year?
I think if we keep the team in place, yes. One of the things that we've been doing, frankly, all year that probably was a limiting factor is we kept shuffling people around between locations. trying to find the right mix and the right, grouping of individuals for the best possible outcome. And unintended consequence in doing that was nobody ever got their feet settled under them. And I did employee interviews with everybody in the company a month and a half ago, and one of the things that was pretty universally stated was, you got to stop moving us around so much, because we can't get into a rhythm, right? If you don't know how long you're going to be there, because there were people that went to all 3 stores this year.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I think that contributed to some employee turnover that we had as well, along with some other things. But I think stability and predictability is important for all people, and I kind of taken my eye off that ball. So,
yeah, I think it's a good observation to have there. All right, so we got a plan to keep this team in place for the foreseeable future. So I want you to write this down, and when you talk to your team about this, because I think it'll be important for them to hear it, I want your number one goal when you go to the Hillsborough store to say, our number one goal is retention.
okay. I think that's employees and customers.
Yep. And so on the employee side, and I know that you know this, but we'll just cover it just for the sake of covering it. And I think you felt a little bit of this year, which is anytime, your turnover wasn't always people leaving. It was just people moving from store to store. But sometimes, some of it was people leaving as well. But anytime we have turnover in our employees, the process goes all the way back to square one. And we got to train all the way from the beginning. Doesn't matter how good of an individual we hire. We still got to bring that person up. And we're, a bare minimum of 6 months behind the 8 ball of where we would have been had we hired the right person, trained the right person, and kept the right person the first time. So I think that if you've identified that these 5 people are the right 5 people, let's make that the number one goal and try to make sure that we hold on to that retention.
Hey, shop owners, are you ready to get out of the grind and get back into growth mode? Ignite 2026 is your chance to hit the reset button. 2 days in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, January 30th and 31st. Get out of the cold, into the warm, and learn. Packed with leadership, operations, and marketing workshops, and life-changing conversations with other independent shop owners. Go to eliteworldwide.com/ignite and use code CONFESSIONS for $100 off your general admissions ticket. That's eliteworldwide.com/ignite. Code CONFESSIONS for $100 off. Step away from the chaos, invest in yourself, and I'll see you at Ignite.
Where do you see? So October is historically a good month in our state. I know a lot of other states. I know a lot of other shops have good months in October. Where do you see the growth? We know we're capable of doing 175. So if we had the ability to do what would allow us to do 175 a month every month, what are kind of the core things that we need to focus on within that group that allowed that month to happen?
Well, 175 a month is, I just did the math, 29 build hours a day, right? So with 2 techs and a GS, that's pretty close to redline, I think. Because, my GS, he's not doing brakes and fluid services. He's doing oil services, tires, and state inspections, and not even a bunch of tires.
Yep.
So I think my advisor team certainly have the ability to estimate and sell 30 hours a day, and they probably need to estimate 60 to sell 30.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it. One of the things that we're working on actively is, like, with that 700 and whatever ARO it was, $763 ARO, that was with a 27% closing rate.
Okay.
So our tech average quote was way too high. We talked about that a few times over the course of the year. and I think we've been killing a lot of cars. This is a $2,800 tech average quote. I think we've been killing a lot of cars with huge estimates that were mostly maintenance or upcoming services. And so we've really been focusing on, let's draw that back a little bit and let's focus on the red items, and let's educate and inform on the yellow items, on the, I think, green, yellow, red on the DVI, right? And if the client has a road trip on the horizon or ask for us to do those items, and obviously we're going to do that. And there's a degree of autonomy allowed, I think, for the advisor to understand the type of service that that customer wants and adjust that. It's not written in stone, but we really need to have a 60, 70% closing rate on the red stuff. If it's red, if it's really bad, and we're documenting appropriately and showing evidence of that and providing solutions for timing or finance or whatever else it might be. I mean, and we're reasonably priced. That's something else we need to talk about. And we're reasonably priced. Then we should be able to get 60, 70% of those red items. And then the yellow stuff is the stuff that's going to drag you down to a target of 50, 40, 50.
Yeah.
But, this month.
Bless you.
Excuse me. This month we're at 30% closing rate month to date.
Okay.
But the ARO is the same. So that shows the tech average quotes come down a little bit, but we haven't really increased the ARO. So I don't know. We're spending less time on estimating.
So I think it's important, just to run through this really quick. I think it's important to tell them the goal is not to bring the AWRO down. I don't think that's really your problem. I think the AWRO is what it is. In other words, the inspection yields what the inspection yields. And if the cars that you have that, yield that amount, then they yield that amount. I think what needs to change is the sales process and the presentation process, to make sure that we're prioritizing and we're not presenting kitchen sink estimates, meaning that just because we wrote up a $3,000 estimate doesn't mean we need to present all $3,000 of it as something that needs to get done today. We can segment that out into, here's today's bundle. This is the things that are of immediate concern. And we give a price for that. And then we list out the other things.
Well, and we had been outsourcing estimating for most of the year, right?
Yep.
And we brought that back in-house, and that's another conversation for another day on the why. But one of the things that plays into that is it worth the time to price a set of quick struts on every car that's got 110,000 miles on it that has the OEM struts on it if they're not leaking?
No.
Because that's time and a super low closing rate.
Yes, and I would agree with that. So, mechanical components by mileage, I'm not a ginormous fan of. And as somebody, my store name is Strut Daddies, and my experience in the industry is heavily strut related. I have probably dynoed a couple 100,000 struts in my life. So I can tell you there is validity in making that recommendation, as far as at 100,000 miles that the gas inside of that strut has degraded to the point that the rebound and compression characteristics of that strut are no longer performing at its peak rate. But to your point, the vehicle is still largely still safe, and it is still 100% reliable. So what I look for there is, in that scenario, I'm either looking for a leak or I'm looking for signs of degradation of other components. So in other words, if we have tire cupping, that type of stuff, then we're saying, okay, not only do you need them by mileage, but I have evidence that shows that they have failed and it's costing you other money. You're going to buy these struts, whether you buy the struts themselves or you keep replacing tires, right? But if I don't have any evidence that it's causing a safety problem or it's causing an issue with other components and other systems, then that's a really difficult conversation to have. Oh, you should replace that strut just because.
Yeah.
So I
Just
would
because
agree with that.
I would really like to have that $3,000 of revenue. You should replace those struts.
Yeah.
No.
So I think that comes down to you guys sitting down and having a really good conversation about what your red, yellow, green standards are, what that internal communication needs to be as far as what things do we recommend by mileage, what things don't we recommend by mileage, who makes the mileage recommendations. In other words, does the service advisor make the mileage recommendations? Does the tech do the mileage recommendations? I think, and that now that you got a good team in place, I think that's a good place to start with them. Is just try to make sure that you get. The other thing is I mean, but it's not just techs, it's techs and service advisors. Everybody kind of has their own opinion on all of that stuff, and I think trying to cram the one size fits all, down the group is there's some things that you probably are going to concede on to what their opinions are going to be because and when it gets into real life practice, they're going to do it subconsciously that way anyways, right? So as long as it's not a deal breaker for you, then some things you might as well just go ahead and let them have their way on.
Yeah. Well, we have started having team meetings where we have front of house individuals and back of house individuals and office individuals from every store come together once a month and go over process and procedure and rewrite and get input. And actually, last Tuesday was the meeting for November, and that's what we talked about was updating our DVI standards and what qualifies as yellow, what is red, when do we need to call in a second opinion if it's a GS doing the DVI, when do we need to call a technician over to give a judgment call. And we were having conversations about control arm bushings cracked, what's a yellow level of crack, what's a red level of crack, and who's qualified to make that judgment call, how to properly measure ball joint play, things like that. So we actually established that, and we did some pretty significant updates to our previous standard sheet that we had. And because of the turnover that we've had in the last year, because of reasons, a lot of the folks had never even seen that sheet because I had printed and laminated and handed them out to everybody.
Yep.
And now like half the people had that and half of the people didn't. And so it was like, well, I'm going to do the update. I'm going to print it out and hand it out to everybody. So, there's been a lot of time for self-reflection here in the last several weeks.
So I think another thing that you probably ought to think about there in that scenario is shooting a quick video on those, just so you can add to your training when you do onboard somebody. Because it's one thing to write it down. I mean, technicians are not paper readers. I mean, the least visited section of Identifix is description and operation, right?
Yeah.
So I would think about, maybe taking a picture or a video, and that way you can have, hey, we consider this yellow, we consider this green, we consider this red, right? You don't have to, and that you can just accumulate that over time. And that way you've got some sort of a visual there as well that you can add to your standard sheet. Tires good, tires needed in the next 6 months, tires needed today. Those types of things. And that way it just kind of keeps everybody on the same standard and have a better understanding of what that is.
Okay.
All right. So I wanted to circle back to another comment that you made on the pricing side of things. And you felt like maybe we're talking about the closing percentage. We were talking about the estimates being large, being one part of it there, as far as having maybe too many things on the estimate that we were presenting at one time. And then you said something about your pricing structure and your pricing strategy maybe having some effect on that closing percentage as well. You mind kind of going into a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah. So another thing that I learned kind of internally when I interviewed the entire staff was I'm okay with being the expensive guy in town, but we've got to provide value to justify the expense, right? And, we've got the best warranty in town, and we've got free loaner cars, and, all of those kind of things that we train into the advisors to talk about. But the perception had become within the company that we were, one, too expensive, and two, we weren't bringing the value the way that we used to, right? But there's always the risk of people selling out of their own pocket and considering what they can afford versus what our customers can afford, right? So you have to take that and with a grain of salt. But then if you go and you look at, our Google reviews, right, our 1-star reviews, almost all have to do with pricing or failure of communication.
Yep.
Ultimately. And so, well, you got 1,000 reviews, and you got 30 1-star reviews, and if 20 of them are talking about pricing, well, that's 20 people out of 1,000. How many customers do you actually have in that time? Should you listen to that? Well, so take it with a grain of salt. But so that's 2 pieces of smoke, right? And then you start talking around the community, and you start digging around the community, and the reputation is they're really expensive. They're really expensive. They're really expensive. So Ruth's Chris is really expensive, but if you ask people about Ruth's Chris, typically they're really expensive is not the first thing people say. They talk about the food, the service, and the price is part of the conversation for some folks, right? So I just felt like there was enough smoke that I needed to dig for some fire, right? And one of the things that has happened in the last year is our labor rate's gone up $57 in the last 17 months or so. And we are far and away the most expensive independent in the market. And we're more expensive than a lot of the dealerships in the market, right? And that's okay if you're bringing that value. But I'm not sure that we've been bringing the value to that level.
So I'm going to ask you a question really quick.
Okay.
Because I think that vocabulary matters when we talk, and I want the listeners to, because value is a buzzword that gets thrown out there a lot. When you say value, describe value to me as it pertains to your shop and your product.
Hey, it's me, Mike's kid. Want to tell us your wild shop stories? Or maybe you just think my dad's totally wrong. Call us at 704-CONFESS and leave a message. You can tell us we're awesome, or you can tell us we're idiots. We're cool either way. That's 704-CONFESS. Just don't make it too weird.
I want customers to feel good about their experience with us. I want them to feel like they know, like, and trust us. They're getting a high-level technician with a high-quality part. We fix it right the first time. They have a relationship with their car guy or their car girl, right? Those are all parts of that. The other value adds, they're going to be, well, it's a local family-owned business. It's, free loaner vehicles, free Ubers. It's the 5-year warranty. It's, those are all other kind of, they're value adds, but they're also marketing points, right?
Sure.
I think it's quality and how you make me feel.
Okay. So
because Ruth's Chris makes me feel good, and it's good food.
I'm going to simplify it for us and the listeners really quick, and then we're going to deepen the conversation about it.
Okay.
So I describe value as what the customer sees is worth paying for.
Okay.
Okay. Nothing else really has value. All right. In our industry, we say things like our DVI process adds a lot of value. I think a DVI is good, and I'm not saying don't do a DVI. But if you polled your customers and asked them whether they thought it was worth paying $150 for a DVI, you would find out that they do not in most cases. So it has no value to them, right? So value is what you can charge for, that a customer is happy to pay for, right? So Ruth Chris has value because the customer is willing to come in there and buy the steak because the steak tastes good and all the reasons this good service is good and all that. I think what you described there is you have a level of an experience that you feel like your customers will value.
Okay.
Right.
I think that's accurate.
And if we can give them enough of what they actually value, then price becomes not an important thing anymore.
Less important
for sure.
Yeah.
So with that, every market is different, right? And I've heard your podcast with Brian, and I've heard Brian talk about his market and his customers, and he has a really good pulse on what his area is and, what they're able to do and what they're not able to do and so on and so forth. And it's different. And he's right about that because the values of different areas are different and what they value is going to be different. So my question is, what do you feel like if you think about your customers in your area, what do they really value from a willing to pay for it standpoint?
I think they value the customer experience, how we make them feel.
Okay.
I think they want it fixed right the first time, right now. Or maybe not even right now. They want it fixed right the first time when they want it fixed.
Okay.
More often than not, it's right now. Sometimes some people are planners and they plan ahead and that kind of thing, but most people, 2:30 in the afternoon on a Friday, I'm going on a road trip tomorrow morning. My check engine light's on, right?
Okay.
So I think timing, doing it right, making them feel good. Those are the things I think that are valued.
All righty. So then if you feel that, then we need to design the customer experience around those things, which I think you've done in some aspects of it, which is timing. A portion of that is speed of service and making sure that we make them a priority. And I would agree with a lot of what you're saying there. It just third-party observation says the closer we get to large population bases, time becomes more of a concern to those people than almost anything else, right? Because convenience of their lives are busier, they're professional. We usually have two working members of the household. We're running around all day long doing, working, and then we get home and running around doing the kid stuff. So there's very little free time. They depend on the car. They got high expectations. They're usually professional manager people of some kind, probably, which means they have a higher expectation of people in general and experience, service and experience in general, which leads to the speed of service model in those areas, right?
Yeah.
So what do we need to change about the conversation on the front end? Are we having a good conversation on the front end of what, and I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but are we having a conversation on the front end that sets the table for what they value?
You're talking about the intake conversation?
Yeah.
Right up?
Yeah.
Not effectively.
Okay.
Like at the Hillsborough Street store, the primary selling advisor there and the support advisor are both just really likable dudes who put you at ease and are really good at just kind of, they're trustworthy dudes and people trust them naturally.
Mm-hmm.
That's not systematized. That's just them being the types of guys that put people at ease, right? And that it's not about, sure, they are saying, here's what you should expect. Here's what I'm going to call you. Here's, I'll send you a link that's going to have pictures and videos of anything that we might need to discuss. But that's not systematized. They're just doing that because they know that makes their life easier to do it. I don't have a policy saying that here's what we need to cover in that conversation.
Okay. I would think about, and I would talk to the service advisors as well, just to kind of think about, so closing percentage is largely affected by objections, right? Objections in our industry are very consistently predictable as far as what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, in most cases, once we get to the root cause of it, are going to get down to price, a majority of the time. But I don't think it's focused on I don't think it's really the price that's the problem. I think it's the way that we presented the value, like you said. So they didn't understand. We just told them they needed struts, and struts are going to be $1,500, and they got sticker shock from $1,500 worth of struts because they've never put struts on their vehicle before, and they think it's too expensive. They go get a second opinion somewhere, Some other guy tells them either A, they don't need struts and you were just trying to rip them off, or B, they do the struts, but they do the struts for $900 instead of $1,500, and now you were too expensive, right? And that's where I think you are getting that reputation in the industry. I don't think or in the area. And I've sailed that same same ship, and we fight those same seas there. But my opinion is, I don't think that comes down to as much of what your price is. I know you talked about your labor guide, not the labor guide markup, but the labor matrix.
Yeah, the labor matrix. I think my labor matrix and my labor rate were both a little bit aggressive, and so I've rolled both of those back. They're still on the high end of the marketplace, or at least the rate is. I've gone far less aggressive on the matrix. We've had some jobs where we were way more than the dealership, and it wasn't a commodity item job, and it was because of the combination of our labor guide markup, our labor matrix, and our labor rate all created enormous labor prices. And I got to have margin, right? Because there's always upward wage pressure on the skilled labor side of it, and it's that time of year to be shopping for health insurance again, and Lord knows that ain't getting any cheaper, and everything else. But that falls back to the question of, do you want something at a slightly lower margin and just do volume and outrun your overhead, or do you want incredible margin but no cars? I don't know.
And so,
is that a scarcity fear-based mindset that I'm in right now because I'm scarred, or?
I think there's an element of that. I really do. I think that you guys had a lot of challenges in a kind of a short amount of time. And honestly, I think that feedback that you get is never good. It's never fun feedback to hear. And I think that it shows, regardless of what you try to put out there on the evil shop owner side of things, that that you do care, and you do care about what your customers think and what your employees think. I give you a tremendous amount of credit for going through and having those employee conversations, because that's not an easy thing to sit down and do, especially the size company that you have with the number of team members that you have, and to digest the feedback that you had there, because it sounds like not all of it was great feedback, which is another really good indication of their trust and faith in you as the owner.
Well, I was happy that they were willing to shoot straight with me. I also ended up calling a few of the high-level individuals that have left the organization in the last year or two and talking to them about their experience. And obviously, they were much more comfortable, no filter at all, right? And I'm thankful that none of them were like mean to me. None of them punched me in the nose. But they also had no motivation to sugarcoat anything. So it's good information.
Yeah, but that's that, like I said, that's a testament to to the relationships that you built with your team, and that they're willing to share that information with you and give you some bad news every now and again, because it doesn't happen everywhere. So that's a good thing there. On the price dropping thing, anytime that we do a price adjustment, I like to go back through and do a math check. We didn't drop the price to make less money, right? We dropped the price to hopefully price ourselves into the market to be able to make more money. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting strategy sometimes, obviously, meaning that we need to go back through and check the math to make sure we obviously feel like that should have an impact on the closing percentage, right? So we set our closing percentage at the Hillsborough store. Were we at this pricing in October, or have we made that pricing change since October?
That pricing change was made 48 hours ago, Monday morning.
All right. So our record month was with our aggressive pricing that was pricing us out of the market. Mm-hmm. And we had a 27% closing percentage. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
27.1.
All right. So have you gone back through and done the math and said, if we did the exact same volume that we did now with the same closing percentage, where does that take our sales to? And then where is our break even of closing percentage to where we would have to get back to the 175?
The challenge with that is that it was not just a pure labor rate change; it was labor rate and labor matrix change.
Yep.
So doing that math on those numbers will be hard. But what I can do is say, what do I have to do to get to 175 with our current rate and matrix? But our parts to labor ratio is not quite 1-to-1. Give me just a second here. So the net effect, I believe, is going to be about a 15% cut in labor prices.
Okay.
So
let's just make it easy, and let's just do a 15% cut on the effective labor rate.
Okay.
I know that's probably not going to be 1-to-1, but
yeah.
what was our ELR in October?
147. So 147 times 0.85 is 125, which is way too low. That won't allow for.
So let's make it a 7. Let's cut it in half and call it a 7.5% cut.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're. I mean, I haven't ever raised my labor rate and had a direct. I haven't raised my labor rate 10%.
Yeah.
And had a 10% bump in my effective labor rate.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think that you're going to have a direct 15% drop in your effective labor rate either.
So that puts you at 135 with 7.5%.
So let's just cut it in half there and say if your effective labor rate, I mean, it's reasonable to assume that your new estimating pricing strategy is going to drop your effective labor rate some.
Yes.
Okay. So let's take a look at our build hours in October, and let's assume what our labor sales would have been at 135.
So 575 hours sold in October. So
575 times 135, that's
77.6.
Yep.
And we had 84.4 in October was our actual sales. So a difference of $6,800 in labor revenue divided by 135 means I need to sell 50 more hours to get to the same number.
Yep. And so we've kind of already talked about the fact that in October, we were at red line as far as a production capacity standpoint with 2 technicians. We were doing about 29 build hours a day between the 2 technicians and the GS, which is...
And it would need to be 31.2.
Yeah. And that's
which I'm not sure we can do.
Yeah, that's already killing it with 2 good technicians and a GS out there. It might not be if you had 3 A-level technicians, you might be able to get something that.
Okay, let's step back. Something that we didn't discuss. We've talked about it earlier in the year. My 2 Raleigh stores are relatively close together.
Yep.
Hillsborough Street store, the one that we always talk about, has high volume and traffic and visibility. Northwest Street is on a feeder road and doesn't have good visibility, but it has more bay space. And so this store fills up and then overflows down to that store. So Northwest Street supplies capacity and Hillsborough Street supplies car count, and they kind of have this symbiosis, right? So some of that labor that was done by that was billed by Hillsborough Street happened at Northwest Street because they just ferried them back and forth. So I still have more capacity at West Street, and I'm sorry I didn't think about that earlier.
Okay.
So another 2 hours is totally doable.
Okay, so it's doable.
Yeah.
All right, so you're running that more like a satellite location.
Yeah, and that's a really important factor in all this. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up earlier. I wasn't thinking about it.
No, that makes a big difference. So, okay.
So you look at technician hours last month. I said that there was 500 and some hours. The primary technician there did 260. A secondary technician had some time off, but he did 161. The GS did 50. So that's 460 of the 5. So that means 110, 112 hours happened at Northwest Street.
Okay.
So.
All right. And I'm assuming they have capacity to take on much more than that?
Yeah. Yeah. West Street's not working at capacity.
All righty. So, so you have the ability to sell more. We're just going to transition that over to the other store, which is fine. That makes that's a big difference there. Have we had this conversation with the front counter? As far as
so I had it with the front counter, and part of their compensation is off of gross profit. They get a percentage of shop-wide gross profit.
Yep.
And so there were some concerns about cutting gross profit, but there was some understanding because they do feel like they get blown out of the water with some competitive price shopping occasionally. So it was, mixed reaction, but they understood the effort. And one of the things I said is like, guys, we're not Firestone. We're not a dealership group. If we make this change and it works, great. And if it doesn't work, we can change it back in a couple of weeks,
Yep.
And I think they understand that. I had the conversation with the guys in the shop, and they were all universally happy about it. They were like, yeah, but they always are. They think that.
I was going to say, unfortunately, it's a weird conversation because as much as technicians want the labor, their labor,
they all want to make $250,000 a year and have all the benefits, but they think we should be $75 an hour.
Yeah, every one of them I've ever talked to. And so, with all that being said, my question is, you said your service advisors felt like they were getting shopped a lot and they were happy about that. When you guys, so obviously the closing percentage has to go up. That's the number that we're looking to improve, right? We're looking for the closing
percentage in ARO
increase. All right.
Yep.
So if the closing percentage increases, then we know that we've had a successful. What is your dry run on this? In other words, how long are you willing to run this?
I'm willing to run it for a month. I think to get some of the peaks and valleys out because, like for example, we're talking about this store specifically. They don't have a lot of problem vehicles in the building, but like at our big store right now, this morning in our team meeting, we were celebrating that a car that's been with us for 6 months was finally finished. I've taken a much heavier role in day-to-day operations at that store in the last few weeks. And when I first sat down to do it, I pulled up our loaner car sheet and I was like, hey guys, we need to check this vehicle in. Clearly, we've not been following the process because it says that this customer's had a car for 156 days. And they were like, well, about that. I was like, I should have known that this customer had a car for 156 days. But that immediately became priority number one, is to get that client's vehicle finished and done. And we finally finished it yesterday. Just in time because they showed up with my loaner car 14,000 miles overdue for oil change with steel belt hanging out of one of the tires, complaining about a vibration.
So problems beget problems, don't they?
They do.
And, so closing percentages, is kind of the thing that we need to focus on there. We need to try to keep all things else the same. Tech average quote needs to try to stay the same, because if tech average quote comes down, then closing percentage goes up, but ARO stays the same. So I would try to focus on, making sure that they understand, hey, we need to try to make this a sanitary test environment here, just so we can see what we're at.
Okay.
Because if you're
If
tech
you twist
average,
too many knobs at once, you can't tell which one made the change. Yeah.
yeah, and if your closing percentage goes up to 40%, but your tech average quote drops $700, you're going to think in their mind that dropping the price is what made the closing percentage go up, but the closing percentage didn't really go up on the stuff that they were actually going to have a chance to sell. It just stayed the same, right? The other thing that I think is a good practice to do, again, I still believe going back through and doing a value audit of, making sure that we do that description with the team and the service advisor of what is value. I think a lot of times, a lot of the sales training that we have in our industry focuses on features and benefits that are easy for everybody to say the same. If we pick up the phone and we call 10 good shops are going to talk to us about their warranty and the fact they have ASE certified technicians and all of those other things. And probably 25 to 50% of the bad shops are going to say the same stuff too, right? Because TechNet doesn't fit quality of shop or quality of employees. It takes $119 a month to have a 24,000 mile warranty. And so that's not really a differentiator, I don't think. Let me rephrase that.
5-year, 50,000 mile warranty nationwide. Just saying.
You have to have it. I'm not saying it's not a differentiator. I'm saying if we're all leading with the same thing, right? It's not difficult for me to say 5-year, 50,000 miles the same way as it is for you to say, and when are they going to find out that that's actually bogus or not?
Yeah.
The car actually has to break 4 years from now for us to find out. So they got to say yes to, so I don't really find that to be a huge differentiator in a lot of places. So I would sit down with the team there and figure out, hey, what do you feel like the differentiators really are? I think another thing would be good to do is when they get a no, like when a customer declines for, wholesale, or especially a red item, right? You're focused right now on trying to sell more core needs, like today needs. And I agree with that. We should almost never lose brakes. We should almost never lose tires below 2/32 of an inch. We should almost never lose, things that are immediate safety or reliability concerns, right? And I agree with your thinking there. My question is, every single time that happens is, did we actually find out why? And so Bob Cooper, there's a great audio file, and you have access to this on the Elite website through your client portal. I would get your service advisors to listen to it. I listen to it at least once a year. For those of you that are out there that have never heard Bob Cooper speak, I thought I was a good salesperson until I listened to this audio file, and I realized how inadequate I really was.
This is Cooper from like 2005 or something.
This is
a class.
It might be from like 30 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's
listeners.
timeless.
Cooper was the founder of Elite.
Yeah, Bob Cooper was the founder of Elite Worldwide, and he was he was a phenomenal communicator. He's a Zig Ziglar type individual that just really had a way of communicating with people, and he was a value-based individual. So he tells a story in this audio file about a customer that came in with a vehicle that had a noise, and they did their evaluation, and they identified in the evaluation that the U-joints had play in the U-joints, and that's what was causing the noise. All right. And they disassembled the U-joints to find the play and all that. They charged him for the testing. The customer declined the services, thanked him for his time, paid the diag fee, and left. And he tells the story about how bad he felt. And he's like, because I know this guy needed U-joints, and he left not getting his car fixed. So he had the same problem that he showed up with, and he paid whatever the diag fee was. And he said, I felt so bad about it that I actually called the guy back a couple days later, and I kind of begged him to figure out where I failed in communicating with him that he left not getting his car fixed. And he says, well, Bob, I just want you to know that I didn't get my car fixed because you lied to me. And he says, well, what do you mean I lied to you? And he says, well, my brother-in-law is a mechanic. And what I didn't tell you is that my brother-in-law looked at the vehicle before I brought it here. And he looked at the U-joints and he told me that the U-joints were good. All right. And you tried to sell me U-joints and I don't need U-joints. And therefore you lied to me. Right. And so in that conversation, what he realized is that he didn't do a good enough job of explaining, what was necessary there and why, what our recommendation was, and that he didn't get the information from the individual at the time when he could have fixed the problem about why he said no. Because if we get that, then we can have a chance to handle that before it leaves. From a service advisor standpoint, what we do most of the time is most customers are non-confrontational. And so they smile at us and they give us some sort of a sidestep objection. Okay, well, I tell you what, I'll look into that. I appreciate it. I'll think about it, or I'll give you a call when I want to get that done. I'll talk to my spouse, whatever the sidestep objection is, right? They smile, they leave.
You call it a sidestep. I call it they lie to you.
Yeah, and it is a lie.
Yeah.
But it's a sidestep, but it's a subconscious lie. All right. They don't know that they're doing it when they're doing it. It's built into their psyche, and we all do it. Let me ask you a question. If you go to a department store and you're shopping for clothes and the rep comes up to you, what question do they always ask?
Is there anything that I can help you with?
And what do you always
No, I'm just looking.
Every single person I've ever asked that question to, and everybody that's ever asked me that question, has said the exact same thing. So one of my friends from high school, she's the director of denim for Nordstrom. All right. And so they made one change in their sales process there with their reps, where they stopped asking that question. And what they started asking was, hey, I see you're looking at jeans today. What size are you? And from there, you're going to say, well, I'm a 36, 32. And they're going to say, awesome. Well, hey, while you're looking over here, I'm going to go pick out some in your size for you to try on that I think will be a really good fit for you. And then they go grab a few. So now they've got themselves engaged in that, in that process with you. Whereas,
Matt, do you know how I know you don't listen to my podcast?
Why is that? Because you're not a 36.
We actually talked about how I'm a size 36 on the episode with Mimby and Tanika, because I blew my pants out trying to wear pants that were too small for me many years ago. But I digress. Sorry. My specific jean size came up in an episode recently. Can't believe you don't listen.
I do listen. I listened to the Darren episode. It was a great episode.
It was. No, I think that's awesome. I think, and it's true. We do tell little white lies to avoid having the conversation that we want to have all the time, or the conversation that we don't want to have.
Yeah. And so what Bob Cooper said, that I found really profound with that, and I think it's important for advisors to hear the same messages. He said, when the customer says no and they walk out the door, your reputation walked out with them, unless you know why they said no.
That's powerful. If a customer says no and you don't find out why they said no, when they walk out the door, they walk out the door with your reputation.
If you think about all the 1-star reviews that you sat down and described to me about the customer said we were too expensive, almost all of them came in and got no work done, right? They got some base level service, whether that was testing or an oil change. You guys provided an estimate. They said no. And I would almost guarantee you, if you asked your service advisors, none of them stood in front of that front desk and told them how expensive you were and how terrible of a place you were and all of this stuff, right? They never complained about it. We were talking offline before we started, and I told you that I just got a bad customer review on Facebook, and our showroom is recorded with cameras. So I went back and watched the interaction happen live. And that guy thanked my staff before he left and told them how much he enjoys a portion of the staff that was there, and then left, and 15 days later wrote a horrible, scathing review about nothing that happened afterwards. So it's not like he came, picked up his vehicle, we didn't fix it. He was just there for a free tire rotation, and he wrote his review about the terrible experience he had. And to be fair to him, he did have a terrible experience, and we had to address it. It was our fault. However, my point is he didn't address it in the moment in front of us. He was nice. He smiled. He left. He was still pissed.
Yeah,
And
most people are non-confrontational for sure.
most people are non-confrontational. You will almost never get the direct truth out of them. All right. So we talked about the intake conversation. One of the things that I would recommend doing is I would ask a question of all of your new customers in the intake conversation of, hey, Mike, one thing that I want to make sure that we set clear today is if you ever have questions, concerns about what we recommend and why we recommend it, or if the experience that you have here in the store ever doesn't line up with what your expectations are, I need you to do me a favor. Can you please tell me before you walk out the door? Because I can't fix what I don't know about.
How often do your advisors have that conversation at right up with a new customer?
I am getting very. We had a goal in October. At the end of September, we set a deadline to say, hey, we're going to be at 100% of that conversation with every new customer. And we did an in-store test where we actually did a role play test, and every service advisor had to pass the role play test for that conversation. And so we were able to accomplish that in September. And I do not believe that I believe that a lot of our October success was due to that. Because what it allowed us to do, because the flip side of that is when I get you to agree that you're going to tell me when you don't believe me, right? Now let's go to the presentation. And I taken you to the back and I've shown you your brakes are at 2 millimeters and you say no. Now I get to have the conversation. Hey, Mike, you remember when we sat down earlier and I told you that, if there was ever anything that I did that, you didn't trust or provided an experience that you didn't enjoy, that you would let me know about, right? Well, I'm concerned that I failed you in one of those two areas really quick. Do you mind elaborating on me? We went out to the back. We took a look. Did you have any questions about Jim's recommendations on the brakes? Right. And they go, well, no. And I say, okay, so you believe that 2 millimeters, the brakes need to be replaced, right? You believe that? And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, I believe they could be replaced. Okay. And you believe that in Jim's recommendation that they need to be replaced right now, like ASAP. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess I could see them needing to be replaced right now. He's like, okay, so is it fair to say that your problem is that you don't see the value in what we've presented as a solution to replace them? Like it might be the price. And he's like, well, yeah, I just don't think $650 to replace brakes is a good deal. Right now we've gotten to the problem. And that's, in my opinion, we make that job more like a sales pitch if we don't have that agreement on the front end.
Yeah.
And they
So
feel
the methodology that we've been using is not nearly as well developed. It's we talk about regularly the fact that most of the no's that we get aren't the real reason they're saying no. It's the reason to get us to go away, right? And that we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and asking for the real reason. And it's, well, what's your plan moving forward for this? You understand that this is really important and we need to get this taken care of. Is there a reason you're not comfortable, having us address this concern for you today? But all that feels kind of salesy ultimately. But if you've prefaced the conversation at write up before there's ever been any findings or any estimating, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It only feels salesy when it comes out of the blue. Right. And it feels salesy most of the time because the service advisor feels like they're being pushy. They feel uncomfortable and they transfer their discomfort over to the customer. Right. And so it's easier. It puts them in an area of more comfort to have that difficult conversation when they've already agreed on the front end that they would provide that feedback if you ask for it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to go over today?
No.
We're bumping up over an hour, so
Yeah, I would sit down. I would figure out what's your break even for this experiment to work as far as dropping that pricing down. Because anytime we go up on pricing, we need to make sure that the closing percentage doesn't drop to a point that we don't hit our break even. Anytime we go down on pricing, we should see a lift in closing percentage or a lift in car count volume, one of the two. And make sure you've done your math there. Again, I would go back through, do the value audit with the team. They're the ones talking to the customers all day, every day. Think about and say, listen, don't give me industry jargon bull crap. I mean, like the guy standing across the counter, what do they really want? And then how do we give them more of what they really want? And value doesn't always have to cost you money, right? We're looking for, how do we add value? How do we add perceived value? Right. And then I would sit there and talk about that intake conversation and start there. How do we add one sentence? How do we change one sentence in the intake conversation? What would that look like that would set us up better for the presentation side of things?
I love it. I'm going to the shop today, and I'm going actually to the Hillsborough Street shop, and we're grilling smash burgers and hanging out for lunch and eating.
Nice.
And that's what it was, my thinly veiled excuse to buy a Blackstone. But no, I'm gonna have that conversation today at lunch.
Awesome. Well, tell them I say congratulations on the awesome October. I probably won't see you guys before then, so happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys have
Thanksgiving, brother.
Hope you have a good turkey day.
Our next episode, we're gonna have to wear like Santa hats or something, because I think it's due to be released on the 23rd. Our next episode, so it'll be the Merry Christmas episode.
I've got one for you, Mike.
All right, I'm looking forward to it, dude.
I'll come properly attired.
All right. See you, man.
All right, have a good one.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our video today. If you enjoyed this content and you'd like to see some more, you can click right here. And it would be really helpful for me if you thought that this level of mediocrity is something that could help your other friends that were shop owners or in the industry. You can click right here and subscribe. You can even set up notifications if you want. I'd love to have you on the channel.